Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the President and the Board, we welcome you to the 2025-26 Post-Budget Breakfast organized by the Fiji Commerce Employers Federation. The Post-Budget Breakfast is FCEF's long-standing traditional event held immediately after the national budget announcement. We thank the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Finance, Professor Biman Prasad, for accepting our invitation. We also thank him and his hardworking team for the extensive consultations that they held, including the private sector, and putting the national budget together. It is also wonderful to see many friends and colleagues from the private sector here bright and early this morning. We can only suspect that everyone had a good rest last night, because everybody had enough time to go through the budget details, and that is because the budget was not only delivered on time, but I heard it started before time. So we again thank the Minister for exceeding his public KPI of delivering the budget before time yesterday. Please give him a big round of applause. We also acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Trade, Cooperatives, MSME and Communication, the Honourable Manoa Kamikamida, and his Permanent Secretary, the Minister for Employment, Productivity and Workplace Relations, Honourable Agni Deo Singh, the Director for the ILO Office for the Pacific Island Countries, Mr. Martin Wandera, Ms. Claire McNamara, the Acting Australian High Commissioner, Ms. Emily Wilson, First Secretary for the Australian High Commission, and Mr. Adam Christian, the New Zealand Trade Commissioner to Fiji. Our official program for this morning, and to ensure that we have a very smooth flow, I will welcome our keynote speaker, and accompanying him will be Ms. Jenny Sito, our trustee, who will also moderate the Q&A. Ms. Sito will invite our Vice President after that, Ms. Rowena Taito, to deliver the vote of thanks. The moderator will take questions through the pigeonhole and also from the floor. So we ask you to please scan, register, and then post your questions there. Or if you may want to take the mic, please indicate to one of the staff holding the mic around the room. Now, before we start, and it's always advised by good lawyers, we like to put out a disclaimer. The opinions and views expressed by the speaker and participants are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinion and views of FCEF. I now take this opportunity to invite the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Finance, the Honourable Professor Biman Prasad, on stage to deliver his keynote address, and accompanied by Ms. Jenny Sito, the trustee for FCEF. Please give them a big round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, my good friend, Honourable Manoa Kamikamida, Minister for Employment, Workplace Relations. I always get the title wrong. Honourable Agni Deo Singh, the President of the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation, Vinay Narsi, members of the Diplomatic Corps, friends, and members of the Employers and Commerce Federation. Friends, thank you very much for organizing this very important session soon after the budget. And I want to begin by expressing my gratitude and thanks to all of you for being so open, willing, and sharing your thoughts and ideas in the formulation of the budget. As a government, we have always said this right from the beginning, and I think we have kept those promises well and alive, where we've been saying that as part of our economic governance strategy, we have to be open, transparent, and get a process where everybody, all stakeholders feel part of the decision-making machinery of government. And personally, I have always said this, and I believe very strongly that there is a lot of knowledge, wisdom, experience that resides outside of government, more often than not, in terms of what people do, their own experience and knowledge about the workings of the economy, workings of the agriculture sector or any other sector in the economy. The people who are involved in it offer you very honest and sometimes critical, but also valuable insights. And for anyone in government, and especially for politicians like us, it is important to hear that. So I want to thank all of you for being so open and willing to share your thoughts and ideas. As I said, I do not want to go over that 1 hour, 50-minute speech, but let me just say that just very briefly recap what I said yesterday. This budget has built on the foundations that we laid out in the 2023-2024 budget and in the 2024-2025 budget. And as I said yesterday, part of our economic governance strategy is to ensure that government is able to fund itself, that government is able to create a strategy where in the short to medium term and in the long term, we were able to create a sustainable level of debt, a sustainable level of growth, and only through that we can do everything else, building our social infrastructure, health, education, and others. So this budget, my friends, does two things. One, it anticipates what might happen as part of the global headwinds that we are experiencing now. My own assessment and following up on the details of how the global economic scenario is panning out, as I said in the speech yesterday, could be quite frightening. Because never in the last 3 or 4 decades we've had a situation where the economic fundamentals, global economic fundamentals, have been shaken so quickly and so drastically. Although we haven't seen the impact of the trade war, the tariff war, as yet, but the expectation of what might happen if it is not resolved in the shortest possible time can create a lot of uncertainties now. As we say, the expectation of what happens in the future determines what happens today. And it cascades down right to the micro level. If an individual feels that they expect things to worsen, the income to reduce, loss of jobs, they will behave differently today. And that's how countries do, that's how businesses do. You all gather intelligence on a daily basis to anticipate what might happen. So in that context, and in the context of what we achieved in the last 2 budgets, so we were able to reform our tax system, We were able to put revenue measures that helped us. And in the last two budgets, for the first time after so many years, and the Permanent Secretary, Shri Gounder, will probably help explain to you, first time in 2 years after a long time that our forecast on revenue collection have been exceeded. That means we've collected more than what we forecasted in the budget. And that's a very good strategy. That's a very good indication of a very honest assessment of where our revenue, our expenditure, and our deficit and our debt ought to be. So we did that in the first budget. And we were able to use those increase in revenue to support our people. We increased the welfare payments, support for agriculture in a big way, support for SMEs, and that helped us to achieve a growth rate of about 4%. Initially, everyone said we revised the growth forecast from 3.8% to 2.8% in 2024. But then we ended up with revising it upward to 3.8%. But now I'm told, PS, that once the final figure comes out for 2024, we would have achieved a 4% growth. And that's a very significant achievement for 2024. And it is reflected in the amount of revenue that we've collected, consumption activity, vehicle sales. We looked at the figures. Even though we raised the duty on second-hand cars, vehicle sales still went up. So we had a very robust economic growth, economic activity in 2024. Then when we formulated the 2024-2025 budget, we realized that there was concerns about cost of living, and inflation rate in 2023 was about 5.1%. So at the midpoint in 2024, we said, let's focus on supporting our people through growth in income. And because of what we did in the first budget, we were able to increase the civil service pay between 7 to 20%. Thank you very much for supporting the rise in minimum wages from $4.50 from 1st of August 2024 to $5 from 1st of April this year. And all that has added in the growth of economic activity, growth of employment, growth of economic activity. And again, we are expecting a much better growth, although the World Bank, the IMF says 2.8, because the IMF is looking at the global scenario. And they are saying the world economic growth would average about 2.8%. Our macroeconomic committee has revised the forecast from 3.4 to 3.2%, but I am actually very confident that we will exceed 3.4% growth, barring any drastic impact of what's happening globally. A steep rise in oil prices, if that happens, we could be affected. But if the status quo remains, we are definitely likely to achieve more than 3.4% growth in 2025. So when we, so we are in a very strong position right now because of what we did. We brought down the debt to GDP ratio from as high as more than 90% down to almost 76, 77, 78% by July, expected by July this year. And even with the 2025-2026 budget, where we've raised the deficit, where we are spending more, we still will have a debt to GDP ratio of below 80%, 10% less than what we inherited when we got into government. So that's a very good position for us to be in, a very strong position, a very strong signal where we are. So this decision to raise the deficit to 6%, I know, personally, I may not like that, the IMF may not like that, but that is a prudent, that is a well thought out strategy that we have put into this budget. But before I just explain a little bit more about our revenue and expenditure and where we are targeting, let me also say that our strategy in terms of our deficit, our spending, is very clear. So it's a budget that not only anticipates what might happen, and let's say that we don't get hit by a very strong negative flow-on effect, the transmission mechanisms through trade, through remittances, whatever impact it might have, doesn't affect us drastically. Then this budget, with the deficit, with the increased spending, with focus on building key infrastructure, and we've announced some major projects, will spur further economic growth in the country. And our growth, GDP growth, will help us to keep our debt to GDP ratio at an acceptable and a sustainable level. That's the strategy in this budget. If we get hit by some of the flow-on effects, we have that cushion of a bigger deficit, a bigger spending. That itself will generate further economic activity, and a lot of the investment that is in the pipeline will help us. So let me give you two other good news as a result of the last two budgets. And the governor of the Reserve Bank, is the governor here? The governor of the Reserve Bank said yesterday, the inflation rate in 2024 has come down to annual inflation rate to 1.5% compared to about 5% in 2023. The May figures show an inflation rate of 0.1%. And it's coming through other indicators, very low interest rate, environment that we have in the country. We see some of the increase in economic activity, particularly in the agriculture sector and the resource sector. And all that has created a scenario where our economic fundamentals, like our interest rate, our reserves, our inflation rate. So we have a good story, a good macroeconomic, a solid macroeconomic fundamentals in place for us to take this budget forward. The level of confidence, and DPM Kamkamida will tell you this, and I want to thank him for his leadership and the hard work that he's done in the last 2.5 years, not only through his interaction with our business community, Fiji, Jenny and everybody else. When we came into government, I didn't feel that level of confidence in the private sector, generally outside of government. But in the last 2.5 years, we are feeling that confidence. And that's clearly reflected in the 5.8 billion investment volume that is already happening. Some have been completed and some will be completed in the future. So all that put together has put us in a very, very strong position. And that is why we were able to bring out a budget that not only supports our most vulnerable, supports our civil servants, supports our agriculture sector, supports our other resource sectors, fisheries and forestry, and the Reserve Bank figures also show, figures that came out yesterday, show that these sectors are now also contributing towards economic growth. Our National Development Plan that we put in, and again, I want to thank all of you for your inputs in that plan, has for the first time now put a vision, short term, medium term, long term, where we want to be a high income country by 2050. And that's achievable, but that can't be done with business as usual approach, and we are saying this very clearly within the government. I just said to the caucus yesterday before the budget, I said the budget is fine, but we need delivery, we need implementation, we need proper planning. And I am very pleased to say that the whole cabinet, the whole government, ministers, assistant ministers are deeply committed in implementing this budget with speed, with efficiency, with effectiveness. And that itself is going to deliver the outcomes that we intend from this budget. So, this is a budget for security, for stability, and for prosperity. And I want to commend this budget to you. You people are the movers and shakers of our economy. And as I said, it is pleasing for us as a government to see the level of confidence. And as I said in my speech, and I want to end with that, this is, and I said, it's a cautionary and an optimistic observation. This is the first time in Fiji's 55-year history that we have a government that has changed from one lot to another, that has now lasted for not only more than a year, it's lasted for more than 2.5 years. I think after today, we would have passed the 2.5 years mark. Well, I think we passed it on the 24th of June. And that, again, sends a very, very strong, good, positive signal for this country. It doesn't speak very well of our past, but this particular moment in history augurs well for this country, augurs well for democracy, for stability, for security, and prosperity. And this budget has been framed with all that in mind, and I am personally very confident. We are politicians, we may be around temporarily, but the vision that we have set in the last 2 budgets and in this budget and in our National Development Plan is for the future. Is for now and for the future. So thank you once again for organizing this, and thank you for the invitation, and I'm extremely pleased to be here. And I'd be very happy to answer all the easy questions and get the Permanent Secretary to answer all the difficult questions. Thank you. Vinaka Bakalevu.
Well, thank you, DPM, for giving that brief overview of the budget. And I think we'll all be pleased to know that we finished a bit early, And so that will leave a lot more time for questions and answers. He's a brave man, so he can handle that. So I think Edward had explained, the CEO, FSEF had explained how the Q&A would work, the pigeonhole, scan on your table, and we do have some questions already that have come through. So without further ado, I'm going to start off the conversation, DPM. Congratulations, DPM. Which sector do you see the biggest potential to accelerate economic growth? What do you see as the biggest challenge at national level that will impact budget or growth?
I think that's a very important and critical question. So, while tourism remains one of the key growth sectors, and we expect tourism to still do very well, the numbers are holding on very well, contrary to all the projections last year, contrary to some of the projections for this year. The first quarter figures show growth. Last month's, there are some headwinds in some of the source destinations, but tourism is doing very well. But the resource sectors, as pointed out by the Reserve Bank, is also doing very well. And the signals that is coming to us from the planned, expected private sector investment in agriculture, in forestry, in fisheries, and DPM Kamkamida will tell you a number of projects in the pipeline, the interest that is there. And I'm very pleased to say, and this is probably an information, and I declare my interest, I'm from Banua Levu, but I tell you what, Banua Levu will be the growth pole, growth center for resource sectors, agriculture, fisheries, forestry, for the next 20 years. And if I were to give any investment advice to potential investors, I would say think about agriculture, think about fisheries, think about aquaculture in Banua Levu. So we see a very, very strong potential in the growth contribution from agriculture, from fisheries, from forestry, and other resource-related business activities and investment in those sectors. And of course, we have the BPO sector, as you know. Fiji is rated as the fourth most important or source destination for setting up BPOs. Banua Levu can also provide, and DPM Kamkamida has been working very hard on the connectivity issues, the investment from Google and other players. So the ingredients for the development of the resource sector, for investment in that sector, is huge. And apart from, of course, all the other sectors that we would like to promote. And as a government, I think we've done more to promote diversification of the economy in the last 2.5 years. Through our measures in the budget, the incentive mechanism that we've provided, if you look at the tax incentives, and we've added more, particularly in the renewable energy sector. That is not only good from the point of view of climate mitigation, but also it makes economic sense for us to promote a lot of investment in the renewable energy sector, whether it's solar, whether it's other forms of renewable sources of energy. And that itself will help grow the economy, but also create, further economic activities and potential for investment.
Thank you, DPM. The Investment Fiji Board did go to Banua Levu a few weeks ago, and we certainly saw the potential. Lots of development happening in Banua Levu. The other part of the question was, what do you see as the biggest challenge that will impact the budget and growth?
So, Yes, that's the second part of the question.
I thought I shouldn't let the DPM get away with it.
Important one as well. And as I said already, Jenny, that we are saying to ourselves in government, business as usual is not going to work. There has to be a sense of agency. There has to be a sense of speed, efficiency and effectiveness in delivering the commitments in the budget. So that if we are saying, we need water infrastructure to be completed in this budget or partially completed, then it must happen in this budget period. So that is a challenge, and that is something that all governments have. But I'm confident that our ministers, our assistant ministers, our permanent secretaries understand this, and we've set a vision. We're saying it will take us about 10 to 15 years as part of our fiscal strategy as a country to bring down our debt to GDP ratio to somewhere around 50 to 60%, which means that we must target an average growth rate of more than 5% or at least 5% per annum over 10 to 15 years before we can put ourselves on a path, on a trajectory that will take us to a high income status country by 2050. So I think for any government, it's always important to have the end point. You have to, as they say in Hindi, you have to know your Hastinapur, where you want to go in 20 or 30 years. And I think we've done that very effectively as part of our National Development Plan, and the last 2 or 3, at least the last budget and this budget, aligns it with the ambitions in the National Development Plan. And let me also say that we have been very pleased, and this is the confidence we've been very pleased with the level of international engagement, the level of development partner support, and I want to single out here the commitment from Australia, not only in terms of its innovative budget support strategy, but also coming on board with government in the last 2.5 years to fix our health infrastructure, our education infrastructure. And let me say this, people say, you shouldn't talk about what happened in the past, but we inherited one of the most dilapidated state of health and education infrastructure in this country. I went to Kandavu and I saw our critics don't understand this. I went to Kandavu, that hospital was falling apart for almost 10-15 years. Nasori Health Center had fallen apart. And we got the New Zealand government, and I want to thank the New Zealand government for fixing it in 1 year. We have done, we've got about 29 projects that we've completed only maintenance and others within the health sector in 2.5 years. So we've done a lot of work in 2.5 years. A lot more work remains to be done. And again, we've had a lot of support from the Australian government and our development partners. CWM Hospital, I know people are, I get relatives calling me every now and then, saying, this is not working. We had to wait for this long or that long. But we got the Australian government. We had the courage as a government to get the Australian government to do an independent audit of all the schools in Suba, independent audit of the CWM hospital, and read the first sentence in that report, independently. Says years of neglect of the CWM hospital has led to where it is. And it is our government, we have, as I announced, we are now not only fixing CWM hospital, we are looking at a new national hospital, and a lot of work has been done in the last 1 year towards getting that project started, and it's going to be close to a $2 billion project, over a period of 5 to 7 years. And that will change the health landscape in this country. That is something that we have done with the support of the Australian government in the last 1 year. And that itself is going to add to the, on water and sewerage, the investments we are making now. The capacity of treating wastewater is less than more than 200% of it goes out in the effluents go out in the sea. That's why when you travel from there, even if you lock your window, you don't escape the odor and the smell, because water is not being treated. And so we are making a significant investment. We're looking at infrastructure throughout the country, because we know that not only it improves the quality of life of our people, but it also supports our businesses, investment. Because if you don't have this infrastructure, nobody would want to invest. And we are getting a handle on those infrastructure issues. It's difficult, because we have this debt level hanging on us, partly because of COVID, but partly because of very, very poor economic management before COVID. We had negative growth in 2019, the Permanent Secretary knows about it. And when COVID hit us, we had the fourth largest contraction of all the economies in the world during COVID, because of what the situation was in 2019. So, Jenny, sorry, I'm getting a bit political here.
Thank you, DPM. I'm just going to shift the focus a bit. A lot of questions, and I belong to this SME chat group about what the new measures that's been introduced with regard to certain aspects of taxation. Specifically, there's a question here asking how is FRCS going to identify and police those businesses that should register with VMS. I see lots of cash businesses that can easily underdeclare their revenues. And related to that, obviously, is, I think most of us here are aware in the room about the measure that was introduced in the budget. If you earning 50,000 a minimum, you've got to start registering for VMS. So there's questions regarding the cost, especially for small businesses. So I go back to the initial question was, how is FRCS identifying and policing those businesses that should register with VMS?
Yeah, just I'll leave it to FRCS to work out the details, but two things that I've told them. One, we don't want to burden the businesses. The BMS rollout has to be efficient, has to be very clear, and should be done in a way that the businesses feel happy about doing it. And I know that majority of our businesses in this country do an honest day's job, they pay their taxes, they contribute to the economy. So as a government, we don't have any issues with that. All we are saying is that the compliance doesn't necessarily mean punitive measures. Compliance, from my point of view, and that's an important principle of any good tax system. Administrative simplicity is one of the key principles of a good taxation system. And that's what I've asked FRCS, that these provisions that we have in the budget must be administratively simple, must not put extra burden on the taxpayers. It must be responsible, it must be flexible. So I'm expecting FRCS to have worked out a strategy and a plan and a transition for them to work with the businesses and get them registered, whatever administrative requirement is there. So I would say that no one should have any concerns about the implementation of some of these new compliance measures.
Thank you, DPM. And I'm sure FCEF will organize a session with FRCS addressing some of these concerns. Someone said to me earlier this morning, they wondered what FRCS does with all those strips of paper or all the information that goes with the VMS. Do you really use it or you don't? Is it really necessary? And I was at a dinner last night where this person said he went into a pharmacy, and when you go to a pharmacy, out comes this really long piece of paper, and the pharmacist was saying how expensive it was to maintain. So he went back to the car and he wanted to go and buy an inhaler. He went in, but the inhaler was only $1. So he said, I'm not going to put the pharmacist through the cost of his purchase of the actual $1. So he didn't buy it then. So this morning, there were concerns, and in the SMA group, a lot of concerns about VMS. And I think it's probably the lack of understanding and the lack of information, because it's not out there yet exactly how it's going to work. So I'd encourage FCEF to actually do that.
And let me just say to the chairman of FRCS is here, the senior staff, and I want to say this very clearly, that we expect FRCS to be very, very responsive, efficient, hard, compliant, but very supportive of what the businesses want to do to be able to comply with all the requirements. That's the philosophy that we are promoting, that FRCS should be able to work with our businesses in a way that promotes transparency, accountability, efficiency, but also allows you to pay your dues appropriately and efficiently and effectively.
Thank you, DPM. While on the subject of tax, there's a question raised with regard to export income deduction. I think the exporters in particular, would like more clarity around it. I noticed in the last few years, the export income deduction had been renewed on an annual basis, year by year. The last budget and the law was, it was up to 205. There's no mention made of the renewal in this year's budget, but there is reference to an IMF recommendation that in the medium term, the EID be repealed. And as you know, businesses do have to plan how they operate. And I suppose you could say the message was in the last few years, the fact that it was being renewed on an annual basis signaled that it was not going to be there in the long term. Can you advise what is the plan for the current, well, for the 225, 226, for the 226 year? If it's not going to be renewed, how will it work? Just so that businesses can plan their operations better. And it also impacts pricing, because some exporters, in order to be competitive, have taken the EID into account in their pricing. And pricing is done more in the long term.
So I'll make some general comments on that, and then I'll ask the Permanent Secretary to provide some details of what our thinking right now is. So the number one, we don't intend to take away any benefits from the exporters in terms of what they are getting now. But we are faced with a situation where we want to get out of the EU blacklist. We've done everything else. We have impressed on EU officials, politicians, about the export deduction concession that we provide. But we are still having difficulty in getting them to understand that, and we are now part of EIPA agreement. We've made some changes to some of the provisions there to support the trade agreement. So what we are saying is, we are looking at ways to keep the support, maybe in a different way, and not call it, export deduction, which is what I think the issue is with the EU. So we are looking at how we can find a substitute way to support our exporters, which doesn't create a situation where we are seen to be providing this tax benefit, which may not be part of the EU's overall global international agreement as to the investment strategy, etc. So, PS, you wanna give some quick thoughts on what we are thinking?
So thank you very much. So just for clarity, I think the EID is available for tax year 2025. However, I think as you correctly point out, we haven't made an explicit announcement on whether it's being renewed for 2026 or whether it's being removed. So as DPM has said, since the introduction of EID in 2012, we have been having challenges both with the WTO and more recently with the European Union in terms of the blacklisting. In the last 2 years, we have made significant changes in terms of the requirements from the European Union, especially around tax transparency, joining the global forum, around BEPS, and also, if you see in this budget, joining the MEC. So EID remains the only sort of controversial issue that's keeping us on the blacklist. We are having the review with the EU in the next 4 to 6 months. And with the current circumstances and the situation as we have laid out, we are very confident that we should get out of the blacklist. And at a later point, we will make a decision in terms of the future of EID and in what form we can bring in the current form, or should we modify it in terms of some of the requirements of the European Union. So I think the first objective is for us to, in the next 6 months, get out of the EU blacklist, because it's causing a bit of reputational issues, and every time we have discussions on with some of our key multilateral partners like the IMF, World Bank, ADB, for other projects, this comes out as a issue for us. So in the next 6 months after the assessment, as soon as we get out of the blacklist, we will have a discussion with the private sector in terms of how we can provide the same level of support in a different form, which is in conformity to the EU rules and the WTO rules. So, but for the comfort of the business sector, it's currently there for tax year 2025.
Thank you, PS. I think the business sector would like a bit more certainty, especially into timelines. I hear what you said, and it does take a while. But perhaps if you can bring that timeline forward, just to give the certainty to the business sector, because they do have to plan as well. But it's good, DPM, the reassurance that you've given in terms of not disadvantaging these exporters as to how they could then plan their operations. So I think that's very reassuring to have. Thank you, DPM and PS. All right, let's turn our focus to labor. There's a question here: is there any plan to review the national minimum wage in the short or long term?
As I said to one of the reporters yesterday, and I want to once again thank all of you, all our employers in the country, for supporting, for being part of the tripartite strategy that we as a government have implemented, and we strongly believe in this, and we want to work with our employers to ensure that we look after our workers, but we also want to look after our employers. We are saying to workers in this country that we need to raise productivity. There are serious issues about productivity in the country, and we are not unaware of it. We understand that very well from our employers' point of view. Minimum wage is not under review anytime soon. I can say this in no uncertain terms. So that's where I'm going to leave it.
Thank you, DPM. So I hope that's given a bit of comfort. But I guess let's see what happens.
Minister for Employment, I'm sure I've said the right thing.
I was going to ask whether he would like to add anything further. Minister, would you like to add anything further? We leave it at that. Okay. All right. And as you also know, DPM and Minister, concerns raised with regard to ERAB and the review of the various labor acts, the ERA, Work Care Bill, Health and Safety, and so forth. Where are we with that at the moment? Because there's rumors it's going to go to Parliament soon in the next session, perhaps. There's concerns raised about the level of consultation, and people would like to really see the next version, I suppose.
I think the first thing I want to say is that we have a robust consultative process. I think that's what this government believes in. This is what we've done, and we are not ramping things or shoving things down the throat of any sector of our economy, country. If you look at all our legislative changes, legislations that were imposed on this country, or imposed on our people, even understanding that, we've taken a different approach in changing those legislations. Because some legislations have been in effect, regardless of how they were imposed, things have changed, people have gotten used to those changes, and as a government, we understand that well. And so when we want to change anything, we go through a very consultative process, similar to what we've done with the Employment Relations Act. It has not gone to Parliament yet, but even if it goes to Parliament, there is another robust process. It goes to the Standing Committee. It's not going to go under Order 51, where we put it in and then without much debate we pass it. It will go to the Standing Committee. The Standing Committee will have another round of consultations. Tabling a bill in Parliament doesn't mean that it's going to be just approved and accepted in the way that it is presented. So there is, all I'm going to say at the moment is that the consultation must continue, the process must continue, and in the final analysis, we want a document, a law, with which all of us can live with. Tripartite, government is also a big employer. So any legislation that we have, we as a government, we have to understand that it also applies to government employees. So it's also in our interest to have a legislation that is in the interest of everyone, the workers, the employers, and government. So I can assure you that there is no need to panic about any aspects. Yes, there would be areas where we may not agree, elements of the law. Most laws are like that. Not everybody agrees with everything that's in the law. But I think we can walk through all that. Naka.
Thank you, DPM. A very popular question that's come on. How would the VMS threshold of 50,000 work when the VAT registration threshold is $100,000? I know they are really two separate issues, but
Yeah.
that's a trending question at the moment.
FRCS, you want to make some comments now? I have my own answers, but I want you to.
Thank you, Honorable DPM. Jenny, you have rightly said it's two different things. Well, first of all, I think because it is called VMS, it is largely associated with VAT. However, the formal terminology is electronic fiscal device. So it has to do with all the other taxes. And this year we have not changed the threshold for VAT, but just reduced the implementation for VMS from $100,000 to $50,000 per year. And the time given for implementation is 1st January 2026. So you have got another 5 to 6 months to implement that. And I think I'll take this opportunity to answer the earlier question as well. How will FRCS monitor it? So all these taxpayers are either business or company taxpayers registered with FRCS anyway, and they lodge their income tax return. So we have got their turnover level, but we will take this partnership approach and we will request these taxpayers to come forward. We have also implemented a very cost-effective way of doing it. It will be done through a free post, and the cost will generally be less than $100. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll get done in a while. Okay. There's also, perhaps while we're still on tax, it's to do with trusts. There is a mention of some changes in law regarding setup of trusts by former citizens. Will this change also to cover Fiji residents, because they would also need similar incentives?
I think the answer is yes. It will also apply to the residents, and it's really an opportunity for us to, because one of the things that we've also seen in the last 2.5 years, I know it was always there, but the level of interest from our diaspora in outside of Fiji is big. And so we're trying to do as much as we can to make it easier for our people to come back, live, reside, and invest in Fiji. So that change, the expected change, plus the change that I also announced in terms of the fees for citizenship, we've reduced it from 3,450 to 1,500. We had earlier changed provisions where diaspora descendants, those registered in the Boloni Kawambula, and for others, if you could prove that your ancestors or your great-grandparents or your parents were citizens of Fiji at the time of independence, you can choose to come back. You don't need a passport. You can come, reside, live, work and invest in Fiji. So this is all an attempt to create a much easier environment or process for our people to come and invest. And I know you people have been doing, DPM Kamkamida and Investment Fiji has been doing a lot of work in trying to attract as much diaspora investment as possible. And we can already see the fruits of some of those in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, DPM. I think I speak for Investment Fiji. We've done a lot of work with the diaspora, the policy paper we've submitted, and I was personally very happy to see the measures that have actually been put in. And when we did the North America mission last year with Honorable DPM Manokami Kamida, immediately after that, I think 3 diaspora actually came back. And one is in a big way in Vanolevu doing agriculture. So, good story. The other question here is, there appears to be a concerted effort in reducing protection for local manufacturers. Why? And this is probably in reference to the, I'm just guessing, chicken and fish in terms of the tariff. That's a popular question as well.
Binay warned me already about, so I said to him, we're not touching the whole chickens. and our intelligence is that a lot of people prefer whole chicken than portions. So let me just use this moment to also reflect what I said in the budget. I think we all understand that we have a responsibility as businesses to pass on benefits that the government is willing to provide to our people. Protection is there for a purpose. We've had a history of protection in this country. And some of those protection measures are very good. It has helped create particular types of manufacturing, growth in businesses. But we cannot continue to do this at the expense of our consumers, our people, at all the time. So with the chicken, and I know DPM Kamkamida and I have had good discussion about it. And as a government, we are always ready to, we don't have that kind of egoistic view about what we do. You know, governments get it wrong as well. You know, and governments must always be ready to review policies. So when we put that 3% on raw materials, we had, all of you, we put it back. We removed it because we understood that. So for the chicken industry, it is one of the most protected industry in the country. There's a 42% duty protection. Plus there are quantitative restrictions from where we can import chicken. I mean, I don't want to go into the details of that, but we haven't taken away that protection at all. All we've done is to reduce duty on chicken portions, you know, like liver, giblet, to give some relief to a category of people who may feel, because chicken is one of the most common form of protein and is the most consumed meat, I guess, in the country. So we don't feel that a small support in the reduction in the duty for chicken portions and other associated elements there will have any drastic impact. And we want our producers to produce more, produce efficiently, produce effectively, to be able to have a reasonable level of price for consumers in the country. That's our strategy. This is not hidden. We don't have any ulterior motive in putting out some of those policies. And we are happy to review those policies at a time when we feel that it's appropriate. And we will take into account what happens in the next year.
Thank you, DPM. So those involved in those sectors that have been affected, we have the DPM's assurance that will be reviewed. So I guess you look at your operations, again, it's back to productivity and efficiency, and do like what we did with the 3%, you know, come back to government if we find it's not working. Which just reminds me, DPM, when we went to Papua New Guinea, I went with the Honorable DPM Manuel Kamikamiza. Broccoli in Papua New Guinea is $2 a kilo, and tomatoes similarly. I noticed in the budget, you refer to broccoli and it's still continuing at 0%, which is great. And we all know that broccoli is a health food, in fact, a super health food. And I know people with cancer, for example, who do go and buy broccoli. And in Fiji, we pay, I think currently about $29 a kilo for broccoli. You go to Australia, New Zealand, it's about, I think, $4 or $5 Australian. You convert that to Fijian, maybe $9. You add on the freight, even if you were to double the freight, include your margin, I think it seems to be a big margin along the way, and probably because we've got middlemen and so forth. And we note what you said about monitoring prices. Is there something perhaps that can be done about broccoli? I'm not saying reduce the margins too much, because everybody has to be in business, but it just seems so high, and I'm saying to the biosecurity people, can we bring maybe broccoli in from Papua New Guinea? And we do want to increase trade with Papua New Guinea, much as we want to have trade also with Australia. But if it's $2 in Papua New Guinea, and if we can get Bio to agree to bring it from Papua New Guinea, why not?
Jenny, I think you've raised a very valid and perhaps, a very timely point. And I want to say this, I think we're all very upset at times when we feel that there is an element of unscrupulous behavior by businesses in terms of making the level of profit which is, from a business point of view, nothing is unreasonable in terms of profit. The higher you make, the better you are. Everybody wants to make a profit. But I think preying on the ease with which, when we reduce duty, that's a very good example. And people have asked me, why are the fruits that you can get it cheaper in Australia and New Zealand with zero duty is so high in Fiji? I mean, those things we have to think about, and part of the issue that I raised in the speech is, if we feel that we are not getting a handle on the reasonableness of the price with zero duty, then we got to look at, I don't like price controls myself, as it's not economically most efficient way. We want as much competition, we want the flexibility, we want the freedom, because businesses need that. And we don't want government's hand to outreach unnecessarily, in business operations or business decisions. But government also has a responsibility to look after the interest of the people. And we cannot tolerate those kind of unreasonableness in terms of the pricing structure that some of our businesses, I'm not saying all, but those who are in that area. And I think you're raising a very valid point. And I call upon all of the businesses to please understand, because we need to work together to be able to address this issue.
Thank you, DPM. When I did the sums, I took into account shrinkage, wastage, and so forth, but I still think it's pretty high. But that's my view. Anyway, another very popular trending issue is on education. So education is still a huge concern in terms of quality of education, impacting private sector. This is a key to growth. As an academic, how would you transform education standards in Fiji?
Maybe I have to give a 1 hour lecture on that, Jenny.
You have 2 minutes, DPM.
I said to my staff yesterday, I said, thanking the Permanent Secretary, Shri Gounder, for his great leadership in the formulation of the 3 budgets that I presented. And I said, he's an exemplary leader. And I said, I think it shows that he wasn't given a gold medal as the best economic student for no reason, So, but on education, and I think he understands this very well, we've made some drastic changes. Some people may not realize this. So first we changed the loan scheme. We replaced it with a merit-based scholarship. For the first time in the history of this country, we have a totally merit-based scholarship scheme, which is working very well for everyone. So, with the loan scheme, on the face of it, it appeared that it was providing access to tertiary education in a big way. But what happened was, that system was completely abused. The universities opened the gates, lowered the entry marks. Hundreds, thousands of students ended up in the university to complete courses and degrees which they were never qualified to do. And we lost $160 million, went down the drain. TSLS didn't even have a record of what the students did, they dropped out. So, in the same amount of money, we replaced that with a merit-based scheme. And the merit-based scheme is very clearly laying down, okay, we need this many doctors, these are the places that are available, this many nurses, this many teachers, maths, science, this many plumbers, this many accountants, and the scholarship is based on the marks, on merit, on equity. And in the last 2 years, we have managed to put people, it will take a bit of time before these people start coming out of the institutions, and you will see, my assessment is in the next 3 to 4 years or 5 years, we will have a system of graduates coming out of the universities from different fields. The second thing we did was we moved big on TVET. We had one of the best system of apprenticeship, a best system of TVET institutions in the schools throughout the country, which fed into FNU, which upgraded their skills. They destroyed that completely. And they set up technical colleges and put in about $20 to $30 million in setting that up without any clear pathway, without any clear assessment, and all of them failed. Almost $20 to $30 million went down the drain. So when we came in, we have now re-established the training. We've got new players in the system. We have short-term courses. All these kids are now getting scholarships. So we're saying, if you can't go and do a degree in management or accounting, or if you don't have the marks, school leavers, we're saying, go and do plumbing, go and do mechanical, go and do joinery. And we've lost skills. This is one of the big issues that we have. And all of you employers, you know, I sympathize with you. The difficulty that many of you have with respect to getting the right workers, and we know we have issues with the immigration, and DPM Kamkamida has been working on it very diligently. The new Minister for Immigration, I think, is also on board. He's working very hard to clear all the backlog on permits. So this is a 2 or 3 pronged approach for us to look at the skill development. On education generally, when we were in opposition, we called for a setting of an education commission for 8 years. Because a lot of the changes were made in the system, chops and chains and, you know, cuts and changes here and there without any proper assessment and evaluation of what had happened in the education system. And it's all over the place. So we've announced certain changes within the budget, the funding strategies. The Australian government, again, you know, I want to thank Australia for, because we realized that schools in the urban areas, the last 15, 16 years, hardly any classroom was built, hardly any new school was built. The wash facilities, sanitation facilities, even in Subai, you would be shocked what the audit report came up with. Because we realized that what was happening, the quality of education from primary preschool to high school was going down. So we've done that audit. We now have a program where we are fixing a lot of the infrastructure that had completely deteriorated. The students, parents were completely removed from the participation in the schools. Parents don't even know who their sons or daughters' teacher is, because they stopped going to the school. Government had decided that there is no fundraising, the management was completely pushed aside. We have brought that back. We've given 500,000 in this budget to the School Management Association. We are saying, group together, organize. We provided flexibility in the use of the free school fee grant. We have allowed schools now to do fundraising voluntarily, because these were great activities. I mean, when I was growing up in my primary school, we used to look forward to the annual bazaar in the school. It was a great activity. Teachers, students, parents and teachers association, ex-student association, all these things were completely destroyed. I don't know, I can't understand the logic of why it was done. So we are bringing that back, and we've set up an education commission now, and we are hoping that the education commission will systematically look at what has happened in the education system in the last 10, 15 years, how things have changed, and where we need to intervene immediately as part of a policy. And we will obviously be working with the experts and our development partners to improve facilities. The staff-student ratio, I was a president of a primary school until I became a minister. Jagindra Singh Primary School in Tamavua. So one day I ended up at the school, this is about a few years back, and I asked a teacher who was just coming out, I said, how are you doing? How's the teaching going? And she looked at me with a grumpy face and said, sir, we are not teaching. And I said, what the hell are you doing then? So we are supervising students. In a class of 50 or 60 students, what do the teachers do? So the quality, the question about the quality of education has been affected. But what we have done in the last 2.5 years in terms of getting that partnership back, getting that flexibility, and in this budget we've gone further, and once the Education Commission report comes out, we have now regularized the appointment of ECE teachers, which is very important. And all the studies around the world show that good investment in early childhood education, preschool, gets you the biggest return on investment in education. And right now, all these teachers were temporarily employed, paid hourly. We are going to regularize their appointments. They will be in the school for the whole day, and make sure that even if the children leave at lunchtime, they are in the school preparing for the classes for the next day. So there are a number of elements in those policy interventions, Jenny, that we have put in place, and we feel that that will help. It will not happen overnight, but we put in a process where things are improving.
Thank you, DPM. I was pleased to see the allocations given to the various management boards, but I also have to say, based on my experience with school boards, and I have been on a few, we do have some really well-run schools where facilities are maintained. And I have to say, it really goes back to your management board, right? I think we're lacking good governance in the country across practically everything. There's a distinct, I notice in the budget you talk about leadership for the schools, but in my view there's a distinct difference between leadership and governance. And what we really lack is governance. And if we can get the school boards working, the parents working together again with the school boards, get the fundraising going, I think that will take away some of the pressure on government. Because we as citizens ourselves and as parents, we do have to do our part. We can't rely on government to give us everything. So it's a good lesson to take away. Okay, another very popular trending question. It is wonderful that the civil servants are getting a further 3% pay increase. However, how will government ensure that they become more efficient in the delivery of their roles? And I know in productivity, and I've said this myself on many occasions, and I got hammered for it as well. We go to productivity seminars. Some of our best companies, Vodafone is one of them, and I think their productivity is probably very good. They win on the global stage. We have companies who've won on global stages. But in our own country, we talk about productivity, and we just don't seem to get it right. So in terms of government, I think it's good they now have a 3% pay increase. So how will the taxpayers be assured that they'll also be efficient in delivering the roles? And I know that there is a civil service charter on service delivery and productivity. I'm just wondering how that all fits together in terms of service delivery.
Maybe I should ask DPM Kamkamida to respond to that. But before I ask DPM Kamkamida to add to it, just to say, this is my take on civil service is a large organization. We have some fantastic civil servants. They work very hard. They do think about the people, and I always say that, to my permanent secretary, you people you are permanent. That's why you call permanent secretary. We politicians, we come and go, but you do a lot of work for the people, and it's very important for civil service to be efficient. But I think in terms of productivity and all that, we appreciate that. DPM, you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, DPM. I guess I keep on harping back to the analogy about sort of building a house, and the fact that when we got in, there was a myriad of challenges that we faced, and a lot of the last 2 years has been trying to fully get our arms around it and grapple with it, and then articulate that in terms of what we're doing. And I think this is probably the first year where we've managed to get our arms around a lot of the issues and are now starting to clearly articulate what's going on. And that's, I think, one of the highlights for me of your budget speech, because you're really starting to hit all the issues that concern Fiji. Infrastructure, water, health, and it'll only get better because the plans are now in place. With productivity, I always joke about productivity as I do with ease of doing business. When I graduated from university, the whole country was talking about productivity and ease of doing business. It's now 2025. I graduated in 1989. We're still talking about productivity and ease of doing business. So something's wrong with the picture. And the issue is this. Private sector has moved on and tried to automate and do things better. Government, unfortunately, no fault of the civil servants, have been in this cocoon of trying to actually drive productivity, but not having the tools to do so. So one of the things we did as a government was step back and say, okay, the only way you will have a hope of actually breaking the back of productivity in civil service if we start automating, moving towards e-government. So some of the announcements you made, DPM, about the national ID, about the big ambitions in terms of digitization. These are talking to where government is going to end up. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we want to see government at least up to 80% automated. And with those tools, you will see, one, more transparency in service delivery. People can't hide behind their desks, behind their phones, behind whatever else, run to the toilet when you come and see them. Because the system will force people to be more accountable. Secondly, there'll be SLAs, deliverables. So that's one of the strategic drives of the current government, that we will ultimately see some real investment in tools that will allow civil service to do things better. Because otherwise we'll just keep on moaning about productivity and nothing's going to happen. And you won't, even if you're a magician, you'll still never be able to do anything. Just before I complete, I'll just talk about productivity in manufacturing. Mark Hallaby, if you go to his factory now, he's invested in IA-enabled mechanized machinery that actually helps within his factory. He says to me it's increased his productivity by 25%. And perhaps in terms of the way forward, for a lot of us that are in labor-intensive jobs, that's probably the next stage of in order to achieve productivity, you really need to start to having a look at ways of more digitizing or mechanizing certain items. Maybe DPM next year we can do some sort of incentives around, investments in productive investment. So I guess, so the long and the short of it is government now has a very ambitious plan, and you'll hopefully see that evolve over the next couple of years. We had a team from the UAE just in Fiji the last 3 days looking at some of the government agencies. So they'll go back and provide a scoping report to us on given our digital strategy, what they can do in the certain components within government. For example, in immigration, passport renewals is 1 hour. When your passport expires, they mail you your renewed passport. Why is that possible? Because they have the digital ID that the DPM actually talked about in the announcement yesterday. So, you know, like perhaps we don't talk about it enough because I think we're just type of government that doesn't talk about, like the other government used to talk about a lot of fluff, but never got anything done. We've been very measured in the way we're moving. But when we do announce things, as you see in this year's budget, there's a lot of substantive, serious steps being taken in directions that we've been asking questions about. So on productivity, my sort of assurance to you all is, we have a plan and we're running it down, and over the next few years, you will see a lot of transformational things happen within the government services, because we will be empowering the civil service with the tools to be able to do their jobs better. Thank you.
Thank you, DPM. So good segue into immigration. You mentioned immigration. Questions on immigration have arisen. And we at Investment Fiji, we try and help investors with their permits and so forth. But immigration is still a hot topic with investors. The slowness in processing, the lack of responses, and the lack of appreciation where especially highly specialized skills are needed for machinery equipment. What is being done with regard to immigration to ensure that processing is a lot quicker and there is more, I guess, collaboration between immigration and the private sector, recognizing the security concerns that were raised recently by the Honorable Minister. DPM, do you want to have a go at that?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just say a few things and then DPM Kamkamida can also add to it. Absolutely, we understand the concerns, and when we came into government, you know, that was one of the things that and thank you, Jenny, for being part of that. And I think just an overall comment, if you look at what we've done in the last 2.5 years in terms of involving the private sector, involving people outside of government as part of our reform agenda, and we find that it's very good. You know, people like yourselves in committees, the Fiscal Review Committee, you know, Lisa is there. You people bring in a lot of, as I said, a lot of wisdom, a lot of practical experience, a lot of issues that you pick out, you know, that government needs to quickly address. You know, sometimes civil servants, some of us in government, you know, we just look at the processes and where we are in terms of the budget, but those kinds of interventions are very good. And I think the involvement of the private sector in suggesting solutions, particularly with respect to immigration, has been good. I spoke to the Minister for Immigration before the delivery of the budget, and he assured me that by the time I get into Parliament to announce the budget, the backlog would be over. So I'm not sure if backlog is still a problem. I know there are issues that still exist, but all of us in government understand that. We're trying to work very hard. We provided additional funding in the last budget. There is adequate funding in this budget. So there is no shortage of funding to improve the speed or the efficiency of the Immigration Department in processing permits. On passport, we're saying we've given them more than enough money, and we're saying that there should be no excuse by the end of this month or next month with respect to passports. But we also want to make sure that we follow our policies very carefully. There are a lot of border management measures that we have announced in the budget. We have announced a lot of funding support for addressing things like crime, HIV, drugs, and these are things that have happened over the years. It's not just suddenly happened in 2 months or a year and things have just deteriorated. So you can see there is a very clear focus, a multi-pronged focus on addressing these issues, including making sure that our immigration system is not only efficient, but also it's able to identify any elements that we don't want in this country. So all that is put together. But we understand the issues, we are aware of it. DPM Kamkamida, you may want to add the automation and the processes that are taking place there.
Yeah, thank you, DPM. Yeah, look, sort of in terms of the ease of doing business, I think everybody agrees that when we, sorry, let me step back a bit, just to assure you that we have been progressively working through ease of doing business issues. So when we came in, the top 3 were immigration, EFL approvals, energy, whatever, and also Department of Environment. And Department of Environment was number 1. Right now, Jenny, it's number 10 probably?
Doesn't hardly arise now.
So we sorted that out. I won't tell you what we did, but we sorted it out. On EFL, made some changes at leadership level, and we're about to have a major surge in renewable energy in this country, which will help with balance of payments because of more energy replacement, etc., etc. And so that's now sorted. So immigration, we've been at it for about a year, but still floundering around. And I'll explain a little bit why. We had made some progress and automated the front-end work permit approval with the portal. And I think for a couple of months, everybody was jumping for joy. That has slowed down because of the new leadership with the minister, and he was probably waiting for his PS as well. His PS is actually very IT savvy. He's actually the former head of the ICT department in here, our data IT department in the government. So you will see a fast track of the automation in immigration. We've already had some engagements, the ministers across it. Claire knows what we're trying to do, so we're talking to Australia and sort of just to see how we can ramp that up. But I'm hopeful within the next 6 to 12 months, we will throw out whatever we have in immigration and replace it with a fully automated, integrated system. If that happens, the experience will change. So the system that Australia has is already being used by Papua New Guinea and Samoa. I've been to PNG when we went for the trade mission. We met with the Deputy Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, who is the head of who oversees immigration. They're swearing by that system. It's not only enhanced their revenue collections, but it's also sped up their services. They're now overlaying that system with AI interface. So it's speeding up their approvals a lot more. So I guess the request to businesses, just hang in there with us. Just remember we had hardly even 3 years in government, and we're doing things at a very fast pace. So just hang in there with us, we will sort it out. In the meantime, if you have any issues, Jenny Sito's the person to see, and Kamal in Investment Fiji. They'll log your issues, and then they'll track it for you. The list has admittedly increased. It was actually shrinking. We were all tap dancing and doing high fives, but it's increased right now. But just hang in there. The changes are coming, and we will ensure that that issue is addressed. If that's addressed, in less than a term in government, 3 of the major bottlenecks in terms of ease of doing business in Fiji would be sorted. And so I think no other government can actually take credit for that. So just hang in there. It's being addressed. I think DPM Biman will agree. One of our best qualities is we listen everywhere we go. We don't actually, sort of listen to complaints and go, come back next year or whatever. And so that's why you're seeing things actually being changing. And hopefully you guys are experiencing at your end. And again, if there's any issues with the environment or with energy, Genisito and the Investment Fiji is your point of call for local and international investors. And they normally track and escalate to me. Sometimes we go even as high as the Prime Minister if we need to. So that's available to everybody in the room. Small business, big business. So just share that as a to give you some level of comfort. People will go, yeah, but I need my approvals first. But just look, escalate it to Jenny. Jenny will engage with. I think the Investment Fiji team actually has weekly meetings with immigration. So that's the level of rigor that is being placed in terms of what we're trying to do in terms of that area. I heard from the minister, we had a qualified persons list, and that list is somehow evaporated. But I think what the minister is deciding to do is, irrespective whether you're a qualified employer or not, some of the unnecessary things he's going to remove totally. So that would kind of mean that, like for example, some of the roles probably don't need an advertisement. So he's told us last week, this week actually, that he's looking at removing that. So the positive change is coming. And I think one of the things you have to hang your hat on is the government's not only just talking big, actually we don't talk big enough, but we actually, what we say we're going to do, we're actually doing. And you can see that actually happening on the ground. And that's a big difference from the last 16 years of those guys that were there, that promised the world and promised the roads through Vitilevu and didn't do anything. So,
Thank you, DPM. And I do have to acknowledge both DPMs present here today, the assistance they've given us with regard to immigration. I remember last year when we had a lot of issues and immigration said they were short of resources and money, the 2 DPMs immediately gave immigration what they needed. But but it's good to hear from DPM that the qualified employees scheme hasn't been done away with, that it's being considered. And I know what the minister has said is that everyone should be treated equally. But the qualified employee scheme was actually modeled on the gold card scheme with the tax office. And we did say to the minister, if there are employers who are not compliant, you just remove them from the list. It did speed up processing as well. So hopefully, whether it comes in, it should stay in, I think, in my view, but in some other modified form if he so wishes. We have a lot of discussions with immigration, as DPM said, weekly meetings trying to get the approvals through. And one of my concerns is in clearing the backlog, they just do it for the sake of clearing the backlog. I shouldn't say that, I know, but that's how we sometimes feel as well, because we have statistics on how long it takes approvals to be granted, and sometimes it's been 5 months, 6 months. But we know that we can see from where we are at Investment Fiji, that's certainly improving, but there are still many manufacturers, recent cases that have come to us where manufacturers have had to bring in people to man their machinery, fix their machinery and so forth, and it takes a long time. And I hear what DPM say, bear with them, but businesses, every day that there's a delay, it does cost money. And that's something that I think everyone in this room, civil servants, should realize. Money time does cost money. And look, if you're trying to get an expatriate with specialized skills from abroad, especially to work here, they're not going to sit around and wait for 6 months while your permit gets approved. And I think where employers are getting frustrated is that by the time the process gets through, that expat has left, then you got to restart the whole process again. But I do acknowledge that there are improvements, and we like to give credit where due, and DPM did mention environment, huge improvements in environment.
Yeah, no, I think a couple of weeks back I read this statement from Prime Minister Modi in India speaking to the civil servants or public service, and he said delay is the biggest enemy of development, and I think that's a message that we are sending very clearly to not only ourselves as ministers and assistant ministers, but we're also sending that message very clearly to the civil servants that delay in approvals, we're not saying you don't follow the rules and the policies, we're saying delay in processes and approvals has an impact on the economy. It has an impact on the business. Money sitting in the bank, building permits take ages to get approved, environmental impact assessments get ages to be approved or assessed. This is causing delay in the actual implementation, and it affects the economy. So I think the message that I want to give to our civil servants and to all of us in government is that we have to make sure that, and then that's what I say, when I talk about, if you want to achieve 5% growth or more, then business as usual is not going to work. We have to, and I'm very positive that this is being understood very well in government, and things are improving. Some have improved more than the others, like Ministry of Environment. We have a great permanent secretary there. There is no issues with respect to EIAs or environmental approvals. The efficiency has been improved, significantly. And there are other ministries as well. There are other agencies where there are still bottlenecks. But yes, we should all work together. And I think your contribution in pushing that is going to be very, very effective. Don't hold back. Talk about it.
Thank you, DPM. Let's turn our focus to a hot topic, affordable housing. With the cost of materials and hardware going up post-COVID, what is government doing to regulate the building materials sector, especially in terms of prices? That's one question. The other one is subsidies for single-parent homes. Getting loans are almost impossible for single-income families, but they have no choice but to provide. How are they being assisted?
Just a general question. I'm not sure if some of the representatives from the banks are here, but I get this impression that our banks are sometimes too conservative. We have a very good macroeconomic fundamentals that exist in the country. We have, as the governor said, there are $3 billion. There the interest rate is very low. And the banks must see these macroeconomic fundamentals. We're not saying that they need to become so liberal that they create us. But I think the banks have a responsibility, financial institutions have a responsibility to design products that look after different categories. Government is doing its bit, as I announced in the budget, and as policies exist some from the past and built on by us as well. In terms of first home buyer grants, we are providing additional measures in this budget to open up more subdivisions, more housing authority will also now not only provide land but also build houses. we have allowed FDB partly because of the somewhat inflexible approach by some of the banks about providing housing loans to different categories of people. FDB will also begin giving housing loans on a small scale, and hopefully we are able to create that environment where people are able to. We are looking at other players, other models of home building. There are a lot of different models that different companies are now offering. We reduced duty on prefab. We have duty concessions on model homes that people are now trying to bring and see whether there is a possibility of those. Plus, we are addressing the formalization of the informal settlements. We have a number of measures in this budget that will support the opening up of more land, more subdivisions, more houses for low-income people.
Thank you, DPM. Time is running out, but one more question. I'm looking at Edward to see if he'll allow me one more question. It's quite a popular question, and it's all to do with growth. And DPM, you mentioned the need to act urgently. Are there any specific plans to improve government's procurement processes that appear to affect budget utilization each year?
Yeah, I think there are two issues. So as you would have heard in my budget announcement, we've made some changes to the financial management regulations. At the moment, what we call RIEs or requisition request, ministries before they spend that money, they would get an approval from the Permanent Secretary of Finance. So we're taking away those requisition requirements. We are putting more trust within the ministries. We will pilot that particular change and see how effectively that's been done. Sometimes it's not the procurement measures. Government is a big organization. We're looking at billions of dollars expenditure, and we need to have a proper financial management system. First time we have automated our salaries and wages payment system, what we call the financial management information system. It's called Bisan system. DPM Kamkamida said it should be called Biman system, But these are innovations that we've made to improve the processing of procurement processes or funding processes within the government system. Sometimes it's just the slowness in the way this is done. It's not so much the law, but short answer to your question, yes, we've changed things in this budget to support a much more efficient, faster way of procurement. Procurement is a big and is a difficult area, and we are also getting support again from Australia, particularly procurement issues within our health area, which has been of big concern to us in terms of getting our medicine, getting our consumables within the medical sector, and that is all going to help us. So, yes, we are improving on that.
Thank you, DPM. I must wrap up now, but just to let you know, a lot of questions, which perhaps some of them haven't been addressed. FSEF can pass them on to you. Concerns about, we talk about Vano level, what about VT level, areas like Raki, issues on the bus, e-cards, and the monitoring system for government. Is there a way we can track your promises? I suppose everyone should just do their own tracking. But there's a number of questions here which we can pass on to you, and you can use the opportunity to address them at some event later or at another FSEF event. So thank you very much, DPM. I'll just call upon Vice President Rowena to give the vote of thanks. Sorry, did you want to have one last word?
Yeah, just thank you all again, and I welcome more breakfast like this, for conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honourable Professor Biman Prasad, Deputy PM and Minister for Finance, Honourable Manoa Kamikamida, Honourable Minister Agni, and all the dignitaries here today, to our FSEF members and all our guests, Pula Vinaka. On behalf of the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation, I extend our deepest, sincere gratitude to the Honourable Minister for accepting our invitation and taking time to walk us through the highlights of the 2025 national budget. Your timely presence here today is not only a reflection of your commitment to inclusive dialogue, and also your continued partnership with the private sector. You've shed light on the financial framework and intent of the national budget and given us a clearer understanding of how we as employers and key stakeholders in the community can align ourselves to the national vision. As you've mentioned, aligning ourselves globally as well. To our guests and members of the Federation who joined us pretty early this morning, especially given it's the weekend, thank you. Your active engagement and questions contribute significantly to shaping productive conversations in public and private sectors. It is through these collaborations and efforts that we can collectively address the challenges we face and seize the opportunities. Also noting the robust discussion around health, education, productivity, and infrastructure that we hope we will continue. I would also like to extend our sincere thanks to FSEF Board Trustee Jenny Sito for facilitating the Q&A. Your thoughtful guidance helped ensure important perspectives were heard and addressed with clarity. To the FSEF Secretariat, thank you for all the work that you do behind the scenes. It doesn't go unnoticed. As we close, thank you once again for your candor and timeliness and continued engagement with the business community. We look forward to further opportunities to dialogue and working together to build a thriving and sustainable Fiji. Before I finish, we have one last pitch on the screen. So we've got our save the dates for TOPAX 2025. So please mark it in your calendars. Registrations open 1 August. So Vinaka Vakalevu, and have a great weekend ahead. Thank you.